Hal Draper was an American socialist activist and author who played a significant role in the Berkeley, California free speech movement. He is known for his extensive scholarship on the history and meaning of the thought of Karl Marx. Draper was a lifelong advocate of what he called socialism from below, self-emancipation by the working class, in opposition to capitalism and Stalinist bureaucracy, both of which he held practiced domination from above. He was one of the creators of the third camp tradition, a form of Marxist socialism. Biography. Early years. Harold Dubinsky was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1914, the son of ethnic Jews who emigrated to America from Ukraine, then part of the Russian Empire. His father, Samuel Dubinsky, was the manager of a shirt factory who died in 1924. His mother, Annie Kornblatt Dubinsky, ran a candy store to make ends meet following her husband's death. He was one of 4 children, and Theodore Draper was his brother. When Hal was 18, his mother insisted upon changing the family name to the American-sounding name Draper to shield the children from anti-Semitism as they entered their careers. Hal graduated from Boys High School and earned a bachelor's degree from Brooklyn College in 1934. Political career. During his teenage years he joined the Young People's Socialist League, then the youth affiliate of the Socialist Party of America, and he became a leader of the national student movements of the day that organized against fascism, war, and unemployment. Draper's political choices were in contrast to those made by his brother Theodore Draper, a fellow traveler of the Communist Party in the 1930s who would later be disillusioned with communism and become a prominent historian. The sister Dorothy Draper would marry Jacob Racken, one of the intellectual founders of U.S. tax law. Within the YPSL, Hal Draper was won over to Trotskyism and became an important leader of the YPSL's Trotskyist appeal tendency during 1936 and 1937. He was elected the organization's national secretary. It stopped post at its September 1937 convention, which renounced the Stalinist Third International in favor of a new Trotskyist Fourth International. The great majority of the YPSL supported the position, and Lefter was expelled by the Socialist Party in the fall of that year. Along with his YPSL activity, Draper took part in the founding of the Socialist Workers' Party in 1937–1938. As debates erupted within the newly formed SWP, Draper aligned with those who objected to the internal regime of that party and were developing an analysis of the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin as a new form of society, neither socialist nor capitalist, in which a new class, the state bureaucracy, held social and state power. In 1940, that faction, led by Max Shachtman, James Burnham, and Martin Aben, split from the SWP to form the Workers' Party. Draper joined them in founding the new organization. During the war, he and his wife, Ann Draper, the former Ann Krasik, lived in Los Angeles, where they were active among shipyard workers and in anti-fascist and anti-racist campaigns. Returning to New York in the mid-1940s, Draper became a major writer and functionary for the Workers' Party. He would often write and edit almost the entire contents of issues of the group's paper, Labor Action. By 1948, the Workers' Party came to believe that the prospects for revolution were receding and that it must adopt a more realistic strategy, given the diminished prospects. Therefore, it changed its name to the Independent Socialist League, an acknowledgement that its size and capacities did not warrant the name party. With a shrinking membership, the ISL leadership around Shachtman decided that the time had come to join forces with the Socialist Party of America, which occurred in 1958. Although Draper personally opposed the decision, he submitted to the majority. He regretted the rightward tendency of the organization, however, and in 1962, Draper, by then resident in Berkeley, California, as a microfilm acquisitions librarian, broke with the Socialist Party to form the Independent Socialist Club, which had a heavy youth composition, and later in the decade, it became the International Socialists. In 1964, Draper was heavily involved in the free speech movement, an important precursor of that decade's New Left, on the University of California, Berkeley campus. He was a mentor to leader Mario Savio and others. In the introduction to Draper's Berkeley, The New Student Revolt, Savio acknowledges Draper's encouragement and friendship and cites the influence of Draper's pamphlet The Mind of Clark Kerr on the development of the free speech movement. In 1968, ISC became the International Socialists, as it expanded nationally. In 1971, Draper quit, arguing that the group had become a sect. From then on, he worked as an independent radical scholar, producing a stream of scholarly works on Marxism and the workers' movement. Death: Hal Draper died of pneumonia at his home in Berkeley, California. Legacy: Draper's magnum opus is his 5-volume Karl Marx's Theory of Revolution, a seminal re-evaluation of the whole of Marx's political theory, based on an exhaustive survey of the writings of both Marx and Engels. He saw the political perspective as summarized by the phrase "socialism from below," which he had introduced in his pamphlet The Two Souls of Socialism. Draper was also the editor of a 3-volume Marx-Engels cyclopedia, detailing the day-to-day activities and writings of the two founders of modern socialism. Besides his overtly political writings, Draper wrote the short story Mus Fnd in Albry, a satire of the information age, in 1961. In 1982, Draper also published an English translation of the complete poetic works of the 19th-century German poet Heinrich Heine, the fruit of 3 decades of work conducted alongside his better-known political activity, associations. During his life, he was a member of the following organizations: Young People's Socialist League, Socialist Workers' Party, Independent Socialist League, Socialist Party of America, Free Speech Movement, Independent Socialist Club, International Socialists. He was also a member of the editorial board of New Politics, Works Out of Their Own Mouths, a documentary study of the new line of the Comintern on war. New York, Young People's Socialist League, Greater New York Federation, 1935. Are You Ready for War? New York, Young People's Socialist League, 1937. The Truth About Gerald Smith, America's No. 1 Fascist San Pedro, Calif, Workers' Party, Los Angeles Section, 1945. Jim Crow in Los Angeles, Workers' Party, 1946. ABC of Marxism, outline text for class and self-study, Los Angeles, Workers' Party, 1946. Labor, Key to a Better World, Austin, Tex, Young People's Socialist League, 1950–1959. The Two Souls of Socialism, Socialism from Below v. Socialism from Above, New York, Young People's Socialist League, 1963. Joseph Wade Myers, Dictatorship of the Proletariat. Labor History, 1962. Notes on the India-China Border War, U.S. S.N. 1962. Marx and the Dictatorship of the Proletariat, Paris. ISEA. Cahiers de l'Institut de Sciences Économiques Appliquées No. 129 Série S. Études de Marxologie No. 6, 1962. Introduction to Independent Socialism. Selected articles from Labor Action, Berkeley, Independent Socialist Press, 1963. The Mind of Clark Kerr. Independent Socialist Club 1964. Independent Socialism, A Perspective for the Left, Berkeley, California. Independent Socialist Committee, 1964. Independent Socialist Committee Pamphlet No. 1. Third Camp, The Independent Socialist View of War and Peace Policy, Berkeley, California. Independent Socialist Committee, 1965. Independent Socialist Committee Pamphlet No. 2. Berkeley, The New Student Revolt, New York, Grove Press, 1965. The Two Souls of Socialism, New Politics, 1966. Strike. The Second Battle of Berkeley, What Happened and How Can We Win? Berkeley, Calif. SN, 1966. The Fight for Independence in Vietnam. Berkeley, California. Independent Socialist Club 1966. Independent Socialism and War Articles, Berkeley, California. Independent Socialist Committee 1966. Independent Socialist Clipping Books, No. 2. Zionism, Israel, and the Arabs, The Historical Background of the Middle East Tragedy 1967. Independent Socialist Clipping Books, No. 3. The First Israel-Arab War, 1948-49. Berkeley. Independent Socialist Clipping Books, 1967. Independent Socialist Clipping Books, Xerox Copy Series #X-2. The Dirt on California Agribusiness and the University. Berkeley, Calif. Independent Socialist Clubs of America, 1968. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Articles in the New American Cyclopedia. Berkeley, California. Independent Socialist Press, 1969. Independent Socialist Clipping Books, No. 5. The Permanent War Economy, Berkeley, California. Independent Socialist Press, 1970. Independent Socialist Clipping Books, No. 7. Notebook on the Paris Commune. Press excerpts and notes. By Karl Marx, Berkeley, California. Independent Socialist Press, 1971. Independent Socialist Clipping Books, No. 8. Writings on the Paris Commune by Karl Marx. New York Monthly Review Press, 1971. The Politics of Ignacio Silone. A controversy around Silone's statement, My Political Faith. Contributions, Berkeley, California. Independent Socialist Press, 1974. Independent Socialist Clipping Books, No. 10. Karl Marx's Theory of Revolution, Volume 1. State and Bureaucracy, New York Monthly Review Press, 1977. Karl Marx's Theory of Revolution, Volume 2. To the Politics of Social Classes, New York Monthly Review Press, 1978. The Complete Poems of Heinrich Heine, a modern English version by Heinrich Heine, Boston, Surkamp, Insel, Oxford, distributed by Oxford University Press, 1982. The Annotated Communist Manifesto, Berkeley, California, Center for Socialist History, 1984. The Adventures of the Communist Manifesto, Berkeley, California, Center for Socialist History, 1984. The Marx-Engels Register, a complete bibliography of Marx and Engels' individual writings, New York, Schocken Books, 1985. The Marx-Engels Chronicle, a day-by-day chronology of Marx and Engels' life and activity, New York, Schocken Books, 1985. The Marx-Engels Cyclopedia, New York, Schocken Books, 1985-1986. Karl Marx's Theory of Revolution, Volume 3. The Dictatorship of the Proletariat, New York Monthly Review Press, 1986. The Dictatorship of the Proletariat, From Marx to Lenin, New York Monthly Review Press, 1987. America as Overlord, From Yalta to Vietnam, Berkeley, California. Independent Socialist Press, 1989. Draper Papers, No. 1. Karl Marx's Theory of Revolution, Volume 4. Critique of Other Socialisms, New York Monthly Review Press, 1990. Socialism from Below Atlantic Highlands, N.J. Humanities Press, 1992. War and Revolution, Lenin and the Myth of Revolutionary Defeatism, Atlantic Highlands, N.J.